We lost Steve. Tom, I just want to let you know I didn't forget about your email. I did put a request in to IT for your email reset.
Yeah,
I just haven't heard back, but I did put it in.
Thank you. I appreciate your copy of my regular email, so I have access. So thank you.
Yes, no, I make sure. I know how that is. Excuse me. Oh, here he is. I'm promoting Steve.
Morning, Cindy.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hey, Cindy.
Hey, Jen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thanks.
Sorry for the delay.
No.
Apparently, I'm not as technically proficient as I thought I was. Good morning, all. Since it's we're a couple of minutes late, and a quick head count says we've got a quorum. Let's move ahead. By the way, thank you all in advance, or I should say, thank you all for rescheduling this. I appreciate it. I had a conflict last week, which I could not dodge. So much appreciated for moving the date. This calls to order the November 18, 2021 meeting of the Cohasset Affordable Housing Trust. And we'll open the meeting by way of a roll call vote. And if I may, Rob Henry.
Rob Henry here.
Hamid.
Hamid here.
Ted Carr.
Ted Carr here.
David Pfeiffer.
David Pfeiffer here.
Great. Let the notes also show that we have attending the meeting this morning Rob Jeffers and Cindy Amara. Rob from the Affordable Housing Steering Committee, Cindy Amara, Special Counsel to the Trust. All right. And if we can, we're going to get some business out of the way before we go into executive session. And so if you are following along with your meeting agenda, let's go ahead to approval of minutes. Now we have, forgive me, I am looking for and don't have.
I have the dates. I can tell you if
Yeah,
you'd
would
like.
you mind?
Not at all. So they are for August 11th and September 8th.
Okay, two previous meetings. Have they been reviewed by the members here?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
If there are no revisions to those minutes as you'd like to see them, then can I have a motion?
I'll move the minutes.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any other discussion? Great. By way of roll call, let's go through this once again. Rob Henry.
Rob Henry, aye.
Tom Mead.
Hamid, aye.
Ted Carr.
Ted Carr, aye.
David Pfeiffer.
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Great. Okay. Meeting minutes from August and September are accepted. Oh, by the way, Steve Gomer, aye. Rob, now we move to you. I understand you have an update with respect to the consultant as well.
So after many back and forths and phone calls, we did get a proposal, which I had sent on for. The first proposal is to get the single unit as onto the affordable housing stock, filing all of the proper documentation and conducting a lottery to get somebody into it. Jen, does everybody have that, or should I share a screen? Or
I did just send it because I just got it this morning, and I just had the one. It was just one document, correct?
One document, but if you scroll, there's
chance
two things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So The document kind of goes through all of the pieces. I'm sorry it came so late, but it literally took me 4 weeks to get this. So that's why it came so late. The price for the one-time cost would be $10,000 to $12,000 as an estimate. It's actually billed at a per hour rate, and they would require a $5,000 deposit. The second piece, if you continue scrolling to page 3 and 4, are ongoing services. I think, you guys should decide, if you would want to pay for those on an ongoing basis or not. I've never made any sort of commitment to Mr. Schiavone that we would. I've never made a commitment either way. I said this is something the trust would have to consider and decide. But they, MCO split it out, one as a one-time cost to get it up and get it onto the housing units inventory, and one to maintain it. And that maintenance fees come up when the unit turns over. There is for tenant reviews, as well as some annual recertifications. Annual recertifications are about $1,800 a year. Tenant reviews are $700 a year. I'll pause there. Any questions?
So, Rob, forgive me. This has been a point of discussion now for what, 5 or 6 months. And so, as I understand it, this contract is focused specifically on 147 South Main, right?
Correct.
Okay, and the coverage in this case is does it include a recommendation of the cost that we should anticipate for a deed restriction?
No.
I seem to recall that one of the things that you had proposed using a consultant for was to give us an idea of what the value of a deed restriction might be. Now, I understand that the builder in this case is happy to put one unit in, into the SHI pool.
Yep.
Right. So as a result, we wouldn't bear the cost. But is this the same organization that would give us an idea that with respect to a deed restriction, what costs we should anticipate?
Yeah, I think Maureen could give us examples, but I didn't ask for the specific to 147. I did not ask because this is something that the individual approached me on and said he would want to do. That's
fine.
Get back.
That's just a point of clarification for me. Rob Henry?
Is he still considering doing 3 units total and then 1 would come to our inventory?
Right. So there'd be 3 units total. 1 would be affordable based on the rules. All 3 would count in our housing stock.
Okay.
Tom?
So, I just want to clarify a couple of things. So the owner here is saying he'll deed restrict 1. There's no actual contribution from us to him in order to do that. Is that right?
For him to do that, no. What we were considering and what's in front of what we're requesting from the Affordable Housing Trust was to pay for the consultant, so that one-time cost of $10,000 to $12,000. But we are not paying him to do that. He has offered to do that out of the kindness of his heart.
Great. Yeah. So I just had a chance to review the proposal really quickly, and it appears, and I think it should be structured such that actually the owner of 147 Main, Schiavo Realty Trust, is the client, and the contract would run between MCO and the owner. And I might suggest that a way to do this is for the trust to, make an award to the owner of, let's say, even $15,000 to make sure that we cover the entire cost of this initial lottery system and, some amount of the ongoing asset management that he would need to contract with MCO for. And in this way, we are able to just stay out of it altogether. Schiavo would have to report to us on an annual basis, and MCO would likely do that for him. And, maybe that's a way to structure this whole deal where we make a one-time monetary contribution we keep ourselves out of any ongoing property management or, regulatory oversight, and the homeowner, landowner contracts directly with MCO, for those services on an annual basis. Again, just having read this contract in 3 minutes while everyone was talking, to me seems like, I'd put that forward as a proposal, vote on it today. And, the dollar amounts certainly are up for discussion, but that would be, to me, a quick and easy way to move on this today, which I know Rob and Rob are both very interested in doing.
I think that's a good suggestion. A couple of things. One, is anybody familiar with the work of this consultant? Oh, Jen, any thoughts?
So I read it quickly as well. And I had some questions too, just regarding the setup. And I think Tom touched on it perfectly, that because I thought we had talked about, I put on the agenda 10,000, but I know that that's, a movable number. What I want to make sure, I worked with Maureen since I've been here. She actually maintains the units above at the TOD, which is the building over near the train station, and she's very good at following up. I would say that we had a glitch with them on 390, not her fault. But I would suggest that language be put in there regarding the lottery, because we had a lottery go when the building is not habitable and won't be for quite some time. So it would just be good to make sure that they first check with building and planning to make sure that the certificate of occupancy is in the near future. That'd be my one comment.
That's a good suggestion. Is there anything, maybe this is a question for Cindy, is there anything we can do to ensure that our investment is followed? Is there any like clawback provisions or anything we can do with this consultant to make sure? I guess question number one. Question number two is, I always get a little worried about time and materials contracts as it relates to delivery. So there, again, it is a contract with a private party and we would fund it. I think Tom's suggestion is excellent. But is there anything we can do in terms of making sure that performance is met?
Cindy, you're on mute.
Still muted.
Sorry. Like the rest of you, I've just glanced at this, and I agree that this is a private contract and we should stay out of it as much as possible. But that doesn't mean if we're going to provide money towards this, that we shouldn't have some separate side agreement with the entity we're providing the money to that specifically sets forth what it's for and what our requirements are for receipt of this money. And if it means they have to provide us with annual reports or quarterly reports, or whatever it is, we think we need to feel comfortable, that should be all should be spelt out in an agreement that's enforceable. And one of the provisions could be failure to comply with any of these requirements requires payback. The other question I have is, do we pay them all up front or do we pay them at different points along the way? So those are questions I had, just glancing at it quickly, is I don't see us being involved in the initial contract, but I do think that there should be something defining the scope of what you're giving money to and under what circumstances.
Okay, I see comments first from Tom and then from Rob.
Yeah, really good points. And we're all processing this live. I'm a proposal is taking shape in my head, and it's a $15,000 allocation from the trust, $5,000 payable immediately, right? We're not asking this guy to go out on a limb for $5,000. It's worth it to us for all the conversations that have been had. I think it feels like this is heading in the right direction. So maybe we allocate $15,000 from the trust, $5,000 payable immediately, $5,000 upon, whatever it is, like the next step that MCO, whether it's, their final application or setting up of the lottery or something. So there's 5 now, 5 at the completion of the lottery or something that makes sense. And then with another 5,000 available to the owner as his, cost for asset management and annual research, he could almost like kind of come to us for, reimbursement of those costs as he incurs them or something like that. So, I feel like if we're trying to make our way towards a proposal, we can vote today. If we can make the motion in a way that provides some flexibility, which releases $5,000 immediately to get started, and then leave it to whoever drafts that, let's say Cindy, to define benchmarks. I feel like that's something we might be able to move and approve today to get started.
Rob Henry.
I touched on what I was going to talk about, but I think it has to be accountability here. And I would think that this, in terms of reporting back, needs to be on a quarterly basis on these kind of jobs. Because things drag out and memory's cut short. And I think that there should be that kind of accountability each quarter to get an update. Plus the fact that I was going to say, which is essentially what you were saying, Tom, I was going to call installment payments. You set up a deposit and you have dates or conditions, and then you get more money. And that way we have control. I think that's not only true for this, but I think all of our projects as we go forward, we want to make sure we have control. We're dealing with so many different types of people. It's not like we're dealing with one contractor or one consulting company. Everybody's different, so that we need to have our own standard accountability setup that we can deal with all these different people.
Jen Orm has a comment.
Yeah, so just to follow up, I might have missed it again, Rob Jeffers. I saw the contract, and to follow up on Steve's question about the deed restriction, I've worked with Mr. Shivo in the past year on this project, and he had counsel that walks him through the entire project. And then I know this affordable housing has come out at the end. So I want to make sure that he understands the deed restriction, the terms, and what's on him to have to do, because he's had professional guidance all along, and I don't know if that's helping him now. And that's just a comment that I just want to make sure that we're getting what the trust wants out of this deal, and that it's black and white for him.
Again,
okay.
Who's that attorney? Sorry, just a quick question. Who's that attorney?
Brodsky, Attorney Brodsky.
All right. This is getting to the meat of my concerns over this. If I passed by the site the other day and it's still scraped clean. Conceptually, I think it's what Tom is proposing makes sense. It's almost treating this as a builder's loan, except that what we're funding, or ostensibly what we're funding for activity, can't take place until you've got a CO. That's a long way away. And I have some reluctance in disgorging funds from the trust prior to a physical space that could be occupied by someone ready to move into an affordable housing unit. So my caution, Tom, I'm quite willing to hear why I'm wrong on this, but again, I'm just cautious about putting out funding without some safeguard that we actually get a unit to occupy. Tom?
Yeah, if I may, think of it this way. We're committing $70,000 to Habitat for Humanity to draw plans. And we don't know if they'll be successful in obtaining a variance and building anything on 808 Jerusalem Road, speaking frankly. This is $5,000 for a project that we understand can be done, if not as of right. The guy seems to have a good enough set of circumstances on his hands that he can get 3 units back there, and he's offering 1. I look at it as potentially a $5,000, you're going to put that money out on the come, so to speak, or however, whatever, phrase you want to use, that we're risking $5,000 that he doesn't get it done. And given, how reasonable the guy seems to be, and he's not asking for anything else, think of it like that. Think of it as soft dollar, allocation to planning for an affordable project that may not come to fruition. It's not 70,000. It's 5,000 released today. And however we draw the contract, wouldn't have any other money coming out of the trust until we knew he was, headed in that direction.
Yeah, I just one comment from my perspective on the difference between the two projects. At the end of the conversation, the town, or the trust actually, still 808 Jerusalem as a buildable lot. Here we have no equity. Okay. And look, we need the services that can be provided by this consultant, or I should say, ultimately the town needs the services in order to properly place a qualified occupant into an affordable unit, right? And we need the compliance component, because we're not going to do it as the trust, and the steering committee is not going to conduct that activity either, right? So I'm not bucking on either the amount of money, which is modest, or the need, but rather, look, this gentleman doesn't have a stick in the ground yet, and that's my caution. That's all. It's a caution. This is I simply want to make the point here. Now, Cindy, you had your hand raised from time to time, so please take the floor.
As an attorney, my back goes up when I hear voluntarily turning over money without having a scope of services or what we're getting or a time frame or anything in place. I also have worked with Adam a lot, and I think it might be worth having a conversation with him to get a sense of what his client is expecting from the Affordable Trust, and sort of get a sense of, I feel strongly that there should be precautions in place to protect the trust if this doesn't go forward, because I don't think you want to set a precedent of, oh, we think this is a great idea, whoever you may be, we like what you're doing, we appreciate your generosity, here's money, and oh, you're not going forward, now what do we do? We don't want to be in a position of having to get money back if they don't go forward. And I see the contract that's before us now really having nothing to do with us, other than an independent one saying, we'll provide the X amount of money to help you when you get to point A, B, or C. And then once you get further along, we have different milestones, and it might be helpful to work with the developer on what he really expects, needs, and wants from us. Because my understanding is, for this short money, getting the money up front from the trust is not going to be the make or break it, I don't believe. So I think it's more important that we treat him as, a business venture. And we are very appreciative and very grateful, but we have to take care of ourselves as well. That's just my 2 cents.
David Pfeiffer, and then Jen has a comment.
Steve and Tom, to try and circle the square, because I'm with Tom. I think this is worth going out on a limb for, but it is a parking lot right now. I guess what would be an appropriate, like, far enough along point for us to say, okay, here's $5K. Well, like we'll take a risk, but not quite where it is. Is it getting that first stick in the ground?
Where are they on permitting?
Go ahead, Cindy.
Where are they on permitting? Do they have all their permits?
Jen?
That's right. I wanted to clarify that I think that Mr. Chavo, it will definitely follow through in this project. He is in weekly to check on different things. His permits are approved. He went through rigorous permitting through both the planning board and the zoning board. So I don't think there's a risk to the trust. I don't think we have to cut a check today, or I think it's great to vote on it, and we can just make sure that we have all the backup, and to go with Cindy's thing, to protect the trust. But I do think I can get you a timeline and update you on this project, but that's what I was going to offer to do. Just let you know how close you are. And then the trigger could be when the shovel hits the dirt. I mean, he wants to get this going. He's having some neighbor issues, and I just need an update on what's going on with that. And not the residential neighbor, but the other neighbor. So where he needs access. So I will find out about that. But I just want to make those comments that he has spent a lot of money to get us permitting. So I do feel this is a viable project for the trust, but I think we do have a little time to do the secondary contract, like Cindy is suggesting.
Tom Mead.
Or did Ted at one point had his hand?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted. I missed it. My apologies.
Sorry, no, I think this discussion sort of brought it together. I think we're thinking about it the right way. I'm comfortable with voting on this today indicate our approval of it, but I agree. I think all of this in place is a good idea. So,
can I make a suggestion in that we, first of all, there's still a lot of open questions here, right? And probably the simplest of them is it sounds as if the trust as a whole is aligned with the concept of supporting the cost of the consultant, but not being a party to the contract. Is that about right?
100%.
Yeah. Anybody disagree with that? Any member disagree with that? Okay. Then the concerns that are raised and actually enumerated nicely by David Pfeiffer is that there's concern as to whether or not we're simply putting out money, and as Cindy pointed out, put in a position where we might have to claw it back because the owner of the property doesn't perform, right? That's not an unusual thing for any of us who've ever had a home project. You always take that risk, except that this is public money, it's not ours. All right, so may I suggest, and Rob Jeffers, if this is useful to you, possibly we vote on the agreement to fund the cost of this, pending appropriate language surrounding its disbursement. And at that point, we simply turn to Cindy and Cindy Mara and ask for some assistance in defining what might be appropriate benchmarks for those disbursements. Okay, I mean, and Jennifer Orm, I appreciate the update on permitting. My caution here is that you can have all the permits in the world, but no financing and go nowhere, right? And a stubborn owner of the property doesn't want to sell that permitted property, so nothing ever gets done. And that's my, I'm, again, public money. I just want to make certain that we've got enough safeguards in place that we're not foolishly out over our skis unnecessarily. It's a small amount of money. I agree with you, Tom. In the scheme of things, it's a small amount of money. But we need to set in place the proper processes to protect ourselves, because someday this is going to be a big amount of money. Go ahead, Tom.
So I have the makings of a motion here that would suggest we release 5,000 basically immediately. My reason for continuing to push on that is because when he gets his permits will outline whether or not this LAU unit is in there, right? So he needs to get it started on this consultant process now. It's not like he can't put a shovel in the ground before we give him $1. Like these are pre-development costs that must be funded. So my suggestion would be to structure it so that 5,000 is released upon our society agreement, or whatever you want to call it, that Cindy can help us draft. $5,000 released immediately, $5,000 released at the completion of the LAU application, which is a state application that MCO, it's a lot of paperwork and is a good benchmark for us to release the second 5,000. And then, some contract language to the effect up to another $5,000 for asset management and annual recertifications, so that the trust is committing today to $15,000 to gain not one, right, but 3 affordable units, right? If he gets a 3-unit project approved, that puts 3 units on our rolls. So if we're committing $15,000 today, of which 5,000 goes out of the trust, and from the standpoint of our fiduciary responsibility on that 5,000, the contract can also include clawback provisions that says the developer owes us this money back if he does not deliver the deed restriction. And we may not ever be able to go get that money off him if this thing goes sideways, but at least we've said, this is money worth spending. This is a consultant that needs to be hired as a part of the permitting and pre-development process. We are acting in a fiduciary manner without a doubt to put this $5,000 out, even if the only string on it is, hey, if you don't get approval or you walk or whatever, you owe us this money back. I mean, that seems like, eminently doable.
I concur 100%. I mean, Jen just said that this guy's got a good track record so far. I think it also shows them we're trying to partner up with him, but there are going to be certain things. I mean, I think it's a good faith thing, if nothing else.
Both ways, right? Like we're saying, we're not telling them, hey, go get the unit and then we'll give you some money for it.
No.
We're saying we're with you, just like we're saying with Habitat for Humanity. We're with you. We're going to put dollars at risk in a project, pre-development. This is what we do.
These builders and developers are big on partnership, and partnership means both people have to do something to take action. So
totally agree.
Rob Jeffers, I notice you have a comment to make.
Yeah. So what I say is I like what Tom's saying. I think there's one thing to put out there. I like the idea of getting him contacted with MCO now, because while he is saying that he is going to do this, there's nothing in writing that says he has to, right? So I think he could change his mind, or he could go down a path and realize, oh, this is much more of a pain of an ass than I thought. And I think by having Maureen from MCO on this, we'll know if this isn't going forward, right? You know, if she's going like, hey, he's not responding to me, or this isn't real, or, you know, we're not doing the things that we need. And we would know that before a certificate of occupancy or anything is, given. He has made a lot of, he's gone in front of the zoning board and the planning board and said that he's going to do this. So I think, by having, it's kind of, he's saying it, and this is kind of, as you said, Tom, kind of good faith. And I would try to keep it as simple as possible. Milestone payments, like what do we really care about? So there's $5,000 outlay to kind of, put him on the hook. We're saying, yep, you say you're going to do it. We're really going to help you. Then maybe it's $5,000 on the successful completion of the lottery. Because what do we really care about? We care about people being able to live in affordable housing. So even if it doesn't get on our housing stock, that's a win for us as a community. We have somebody who's gone in the lottery, who's gotten an affordable rate, and everything worked. And the last $5,000 on successfully put onto our housing stock, And I worry, Tom, on your third piece is, you see how long this conversation over $15,000 has taken 6 months, so I don't like $300 for this, you're going to spend an hour or two on hundreds of dollars. And it might be, you know what, you hit these milestones, we get what we want, we're good. And it might just be cleaner, but that's.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that the last 5,000, and again, this is all live. Don't forget, we're all processing this live. There's some idea of like research process, but no, it's actually even better, because then you're not opening the door to, like, he comes back in year 2 and he goes, oh my God, this took me X amount of hours and I want another $5,000 on an annual basis or whatever. But so here we're just telling them, here's your one-time cost. I mean, your one-time award, and you're on the annual research process. That you own that.
Right. And once he's deed restricted, and this is on the housing unit, he can't just say, oh no, never mind.
Right.
It's like he now has these responsibilities. That's him. It's
so let's go back to a matter of formulation so we can take some action one way or another on this. Rob's point and Tom's original language actually shared a lot of similarities, but it sounds as the one that is differentiated is that Rob is actually looking for an action point by the developer, the property owner, for the release of the funds, not the commitment to release the funds, but the actual release. And that execution sounds to be the contract with the consultant. Should the property owner sign the contract with a consultant, then at that point, under Rob's proposal, we would release $5,000, which makes sense to me. That does show a level of commitment. All right. We're not signing the contract with the property owner. I'm sorry, with the consultant. We ideally we would forward our acceptance, or I should say, our support of these soft costs at milestones, the first an execution of the agreement, and we would do so in writing with the property owner. Written from the trust, these are the terms for a release of funds, right? So if we assume that the first milestone to hit is execution of this contract, then what's the second milestone?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Tom.
I had said completion of the application to DHCD, because I know that the cost, right, and the consultant's hourly charges, it's not when DHCD approves the unit or the actual lottery is held. right? Like all that cost will be incurred ahead of the DHCD paperwork. So putting my, being friendly to developer hat on and understanding how cash flow is going to work, I would say that a completion and a submission of the LAU application to DHCD is the second milestone. That cost now has been incurred. What DHCD does with it, or how hard he has to push, or what else they have to do to get it actually through and approved, get to a lottery, is another story. And that would be, to me, so then that would be the third. So I would then say to Rob's, milestone would be the third one, which is actual occupancy of the unit by an affordable tenant. So those would be the three milestones. Chiavo's execution of a contract with MCO is the first. Submission of the LAU application to the HCD would be the second release of $5,000, and occupancy of the unit by affordable individual would be the third release of $5,000.
Conceptually, Cindy Amaro, what do you think of that?
Conceptually, I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes some sense. Clearly I would make just a few refinements, submission of a completed accepted application, that type of wordsmithing. But I think the milestones seem to make sense. And as long as, there are provisions that you don't get the money or you pay back if you don't go forward, I think those cover this town's concerns on this.
And from this sense, since we're dealing with the property owner, would our security be a potential lien on the property?
I don't think so, where this is just an agreement for, you're giving him a gift, really. It's a contract, and unless you were to somehow work that in, I wouldn't automatically assume that would be the case.
Okay, all right. Tom, is it just a quick thought? All right, good. All right, Tom, are you ready to formulate that as a motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll make a motion that the trust commits $15,000 to the owner of 147 South Main Street for the purposes of entering into the contract for services with MCO. Cindy Amaro will draft the contract for the trust with the following milestones: the first $5,000 to be released upon execution of the contract between MCO and the property owner. The second $5,000 will be released upon the submission and acceptance by DHCD of a full application for an LAU unit. And the third $5,000 payment would be released to the developer upon occupancy of the unit by a affordable resident. The contract should also include some clawback provisions that provides for the developer to pay back the trust any funds that had been provided to him if he does not ultimately deliver a unit.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Comments from the trust? Diane Kennedy.
Yeah, I just wonder whether we should add sort of to that motion that once that we authorize the chair, Steve, to execute on the contract once it's satisfactory to him, so it doesn't have to come back here.
You're talking about the terms that Cindy.
The terms that Cindy's drafting, yeah.
Okay.
So that you have the authority to say, Cindy, this looks good. This is the intent of the committee. Blah 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 blah.
Tom, we've got a motion and a second. Would you like to withdraw and restate?
Or just amend?
Or Diane, would you like to amend?
Yeah, I'll move to amend Tom's motion just to include the authority of the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust to work with Cindy on execution of this agreement.
Do we have a second on the amendment? The motion for the amendment.
Second.
Okay. So we've got an amendment that would allow the chair to sign off on the terms of the agreement as written by Cindy Amara and as noted in the original amendment. We've got so we've got the amendment moved and a second on the amendment. Right now we're voting only on the amendment. by the way, is there any further comments on the amendment to the motion? All right. Rob Henry?
Rob Henry, aye.
Okay, Tom?
Tom Mead, aye.
Ted Carr?
Ted Carr, aye.
David Pfeiffer?
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Diane Kennedy?
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Okay, Steve Gomer, aye. The amendment to the motion passes unanimously. Now we move forward on the original motion, now amended. Are there further comments now on the entirety of this amended motion? Good. All right, we'll move forward to a vote then. Again, Rob Henry?
Rob Henry, aye.
Yep. Tom Mead?
Tom Mead, aye.
Ted Carr?
Ted Carr, aye.
Okay, David Pfeiffer?
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Diane Kennedy?
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Steve Gomer, aye. Okay, the amended motion passes unanimously. Cindy, you have more work to do.
I hope he drags his feet a little bit.
Thank you.
Rob, you're welcome. Thank you very much for all your
Thanks,
work
Rob.
on getting this to the finish line.
Yes, thank you, Rob Jeffers.
Pushing the ball, the stone uphill. Yeah, it's coming down.
All right, the next two items belong to Ted Carr. Ted, do you have an update on your conversations with the chief of staff at DHCD?
Yeah, so Rob Jefferson, I did speak about it briefly a few days ago. I did reach out to the fellow I had mentioned before, Steve Cavallo. He has retired. I do have some sort of further information. There is not, there is currently not full-time DHCD senior management. There's a number of people in acting positions, including the undersecretary that for DHCD. Interestingly, I know her. When I worked at the state, she was the budget director for DHCD. She's a career employee by the name of Jennifer Maddox. I feel we could approach her about this directly, even though she's the undersecretary. She doesn't seem to have a chief of staff at the moment. I did talk to some people at DHCD that have worked there a long time. They had suggested on something like this that we work closely with the Affordable Housing Trust at the state, which is a DHCD, as you know, entity, but it is managed by Mass Housing, which does promote affordable housing units and growth. And so Mass Housing actually works with nonprofit and entities like ours to help get things approved like this. So I think my suggestion is to reach out to Mass Housing, find the appropriate people there, and have a conversation with them, and then follow up with a meeting with the Undersecretary at DHCD. And I think we could run this down the field pretty quickly that way.
Okay. So you're confident we've got a.
I think the right play is to approach Mass Housing as an entity of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which they administer, and as something that we're interested to do to add housing stock. This is firmly in their portfolio. Get to someone to work with there, and then inform Jennifer Maddox that we're doing that. She is also a board member at Mass Housing, so it will come up at a board meeting that we're trying to do this. Several of these public sector boards have people like her that in their ex officio capacity serve on these boards. She is a trustee of Mass Housing, and so, you know, she'll be briefed on it, but I think we could then ask for a meeting to come in and see her and explain what we're trying to do, and that we're working with Mass Housing, which as far as I can tell, does this all the time, this type of activity all the time.
Just a very quick question. DHCD is a regulatory structure, right?
It's a state agency that does regulatory work, that runs programs, and has a pretty broad portfolio around housing and economic development, and they execute about $1.2 billion a year in financing.
Okay, and as in Mass, excuse me, Mass Housing, if I recall, don't they have a direct funding arm?
Yeah, they are funded in part by state appropriations, so they are subject to appropriations. The state does this often. They have these sort of wholly owned nonprofit entities like Mass Housing that have certain, responsibilities. They do that for a lot of different reasons, but that's, yes, they are funded. They are subject to appropriations and funded in great part by the state and federal government. They're a pass-through agency for federal funds.
Okay, and Tom, you had a question?
Yeah, so Ted, I'm happy to, let's connect for sure on this. I have some people at Mass Housing. I don't know if they would be there anymore, but I worked very closely with them for a number of years when I was at the mortgage company. And we worked very closely with them on some affordability, conversion, and preservation deals. So we placed a lot of money with Mass Housing.
That's great. I think we got to try, we just got to track down the right sort of senior.
That's right.
And then they'll, their Mass Housing has like 100 employees approximately. Yep. But they'll have somebody that deals with this kind of stuff. We just got to figure out who it is.
Yeah, I have to find, this will be one of the ones where I have to find the right way in. I have 2 consultants who would put us right into the top, but then we would be in the MCO world, right? We'd have to be paying them, but I'm sure we can find a way, directly in.
There was a guy there, and I think he's probably still there, named Clark Ziegler, and I know him pretty well. And so I thought I'll just confirm that he's there. He's sort of I would say in the top 10 of the organization, or had been a long time, the top 10 of the organization. So let's see if he's still there. Might be a good point. But I think Tom, maybe Tom and Robin, I'll just sort of take a side bench and figure out. But I think that would be my recommendation on that thing. And I bet we'd certainly be heard quickly.
Okay. I tell you what, let's revisit this next month for any additional progress. So if you have if you continue to knock on doors, connect with Tom, figure if between the 2 of your extensive Rolodexes, there's a point of entry, great, and come back to the board at the December meeting, and maybe hopefully we have this a couple more steps down the path.
That sounds fine.
Okay, great. You got the next item up as well, which is an item with respect to the gift to the trust from film producers.
So I had a thought on that. Just by purposes of background, so when movie companies film in Cohasset, the companies themselves usually work out some I'm going to call them side deals in lieu of permitting sometimes about gifts to the community. So we were awarded one of those gifts, which was a $5,000 donation from the movie company, which is fantastic. And so I had a thought of as we think through 808, as it relates to the fundraising activity that our partner will do on that project, that we consider awarding this $5,000 grant, this special grant, to that project for purposes of helping to lead the fundraising activity. So maybe we can be the first donor as $5,000 in the fundraising capacity, or we might offer to them that we will match dollar for dollar up to $5,000 to help them kick off their campaign or something like that. But I thought this might be an appropriate use of this special grant, and I wanted to talk to the board about it.
Comments?
So I'll make a motion that we we work with our partner, Habitat on 808 Jerusalem Road, and lead with a up to $5,000, the award that we were awarded from the movie company to help lead off their fundraising activity. Jen has a comment.
Jen?
I just would add an amendment to that, stating if all permitting is received, because they have not filed, they are getting ready to file for the comprehensive permit.
Okay, that's a great point. So inclusive of, so I'll just change the motion, basically including that they need to have the permitting in order.
I've got one question for Cindy Amara. Is there any reason that you know of that the trust as an entity would be breaching anything by putting together a matching fund structure? You're muted, kiddo.
Off the top of my head, nothing jumps out at me. You know, I think, you know, your agreement, you have this money, your purpose is to help projects. This is a project you're working for. It's money that was donated to you for how you best see fit. The way you structure it's up to you.
I personally, I very much like your idea, Ted, of putting together a sum as a way of initiating things, such that it's dispersed if it's matched on a dollar for dollar basis. You know, frankly, I wish we'd done the same thing with the original 75. Anyway, so, Diane.
Just, I would imagine as a professional fundraiser that match option would be something that Habitat would want to have control over. So in other words, we're giving them the money to do with what they want to in terms of their fundraising efforts. I think a match would be great, but I don't know that we would be the one deciding whether it's a match initiative or not. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I think,
yeah. Go ahead, Ted.
So sorry, my apologies, Steve. So I agree with Diane. I do a fair amount of fundraising in the nonprofit sector. So I think this is kind of like one of those tools in the toolbox. Let's let them figure out how they want to leverage that. But I'd be pretty psyched if I was responsible for a capital raise like this, to have an organization like us to be the first in the game with a thoughtful gift and a way to sort of help them get to 10, right? So they're going to want to look to have ways and things to talk about. So they can certainly talk about our gift and they can leverage it, I think, however they want. But I think for us to give $5,000 towards that campaign to raise funds, which we know they're going to do, that's a great use of the money. So I think we just need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is everybody clear on the motion? All right. So if I can restate it, because it's going to go on the record. The motion is to authorize distribution of $5,000 for initial fundraising for 808 Jerusalem through Habitat for Humanity, on the condition that this be a matching gift as determined by Habitat.
And subject to the permitting.
Subject to the project itself being permitted.
I think that it should have the language where the 5,000 came from. You didn't say that. It sounds like it's coming from the trust.
Well, it is coming from the trust, Rob.
It is, but where
the money's fungible. It's internal for us to identify that this is.
So we don't need to identify where we got the 5,000 from. Okay.
No. I mean, if you want it in the motion, that's fine. I just, like I said, once it goes into the trust, it's fungible.
Okay. Again, it's just the public perception, how we got the money and.
Fair enough. So let the record show, Jen, that this is a defined redistribution of funds from the grant given to us by the producers of Confess Fletch.
I think that's good. That's good PR.
Okay.
I agree with, that's a great suggestion.
Okay. All right. So that's the summary of the motion. Jen, did you have a comment?
Diane has her hand.
Oh, sorry, Diane, get your hand raised. Sorry.
Yeah, I just, when you restated it, Steve, I don't think the idea of a match should be in the motion. I think it's basically, we are making a donation. The Affordable Housing Trust is making a donation to Habitat for Humanity. The sum is $5,000. It's from the film proceeds or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm not articulate this morning. I'm dealing with a headache. But it's toward the fundraising efforts of Habitat for Humanity. So, period. If they decide to leverage it as a matching gift or whatever they want, we can certainly talk, but I don't think it needs to be directed that way.
I'm fine with that.
I don't want to tell them how to raise money. You know, we're just making a donation.
Any other comments?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna, let's move along then. If the motion now does not include language with respect to matching funds, we can move it along. We've got, by the way, I'm just looking at the clock. It's 9:26. We've got an executive session coming up, and I've got a call and hosting at 10. So I do want to make some progress on this. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. So if I may, let's go through this with a roll call vote. Ted Carr, your motion, you get to go first.
Ted Carr, aye.
David Pfeiffer.
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Diane Kennedy.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Tom Mead.
Tom Mead, aye.
Rob Henry.
Rob Henry, aye.
Steve Gomer, aye. All right. The motion passes unanimously. Next items on the agenda are administrative only. Next meeting date is
December 8th.
December 8th. 8:30 in the morning, bright and early. Well, that's actually not early.
Under member comment, could I just make one quick comment?
Sure.
I was in the town hall. I picked up a copy of the Cohasset Town Report, suitable for Christmas reading. If anybody's an insomniac like me, I read it. Perhaps we should have a discussion, but I noticed the terms of our appointment, all of us, expire in 2021. Oh, Jen.
Hi, Ted. So I did email you back and let you know that I'm sorry, you probably get a lot like me and they stack, but you're actually through to 2023.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, you're all set.
Okay, because I was reading out of the book and it
right. And that's for the year 2020. So it was done this year.
Never mind. Ignore that.
Job security.
Yeah, security. Thank God. You'd hate to have that paycheck bounce.
I appreciate it.
No problem. And I'm sorry if you missed my email, I just apologize for that.
Okay. I'm sure I did. Yep.
Did everybody see the invite for the boards and committees coffee and dessert for Monday and RSVP?
All right. Are people going to try to go to that?
I'm planning on being there.
I'll be there.
If any of you have never been to it, it really is quite a nice event.
This is a new event.
This isn't the same one that we've done in the past?
Yeah, I was going to say, this isn't the staff one. This is something I've been asking for 11 years. It's actually people that serve on boards and committees.
Cool.
It's a thank you to all of you.
Huh. Well, in that case, yeah, absolutely.
Bring the Baileys for the coffee. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Out on town property.
On town property. Can't do it. And I think that was all of our, just want to make sure. Did you want a quick update on, I just wanted to mention on 390. We hit on 808. 808 has asked for an extension on the closing because they want to get their permitting, which is why I know that it's coming. So that I know that Lauren has been talking to him about filing with zoning for the comprehensive permit. So it's coming down the pike. So that's great. 147, we have discussed that. But 390, I wanted to let the trust know I was going to write a memo that the owner had actually reached out via the chair, Steve Gomer, about doing a tour of the site. And the reason that we didn't go through with that is that it is an active construction site and the liability is just sky high and we should really wait until it's an open site. But it was a nice offer. So I was going to write a whole memo, but I just, as an FYI, I sent you the path that still half of those items still exist. So we're not going to be able to go in there. We also won't know what apartments will be affordable. They don't pinpoint them. It's random. So so to show them, it wouldn't be as informative until it's all done and safe for everybody to go. So we'll keep in touch with Mr. Stasko. It was a very nice invite, but I just I do the insurance for the town and I would be very concerned about you on an active construction site. So
thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Jen summed that up very nicely. Stasco's desire was to allow the trust to review the units themselves to make sure that they were, that we were comfortable that, in fact, he wasn't building substandard or unattractive options. As the building inspector explained in his memo, which I think you all have a copy of, there's still a lot of work to be done before this is not considered to be an active construction site. So
is everything been approved for the water and the sewer?
This was an August 6th memo. I don't know the answer to that, and I think we can explore that a little bit more fully maybe next meeting if you don't mind, Rob. Only in the interest of time. Excuse me, and that gives Jen some, maybe we can have the building inspector in next meeting to give us an update on where things stand.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Are there additional updates on planning and zoning, Jen?
No, I'm sure there are, but we are tight. So I will make sure they get you the updates if there's anything. We do have some things coming down the pipe, but not many that I would think impact the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, so we have a couple of items that will come up next month. I'm sure that are going to be a focus. Will take up some time, but one of the things, given that we're year end, calendar year end, I just specifically ask for a review of finances for year end, and effectively what I'm asking for out of Don Piat is a review of the trust balance sheet. Okay, it's really more for informational purposes for each of us, understanding where the trust is financially, what do we have for contingent liabilities, what our expected burn rate is, in other words, what's going to impact our cash position. And then, it gives us a better idea of what we can plan on or request for funding in the future. So Jen, that's a topic I'd like to have next month as well.
Okay.
Are there any other any other member comments?
Yeah, Diane, just Jen and Steve, I think it's worth at some point putting the comprehensive zoning that the town will be undertaking onto our radar. I don't know what implications certain edits to our zoning bylaws might have for us, but it certainly could. So I think we all need to be aware of those conversations as they get developed over the next couple of months.
Who would be the best person, Diane, to discuss that? Is that Lauren possibly?
Yes.
Okay. So
Lauren or she might bring Katie in or something, but definitely Lauren. It would start with Jen and Lauren.
All right. So Jen, item for, again, it's year-end wrap-up. It's a good idea to get a look at this because these are items, folks, that would come up at annual town meeting in May. So the formulation now helps us gain an understanding. We may want to be a proponent or an opponent of particular items. We may want to do nothing on any of it, but at least it gives us an understanding of what changes might be coming down the road and how we might be able to work with them. So Jen, if Lauren can handle that, if she wants to bring Katie Dugan in as she's master plan chairman, right?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So if she wants to bring Katie Dugan in as part of that, that's great.
All right. I have all my notes for the next one. And anything else for wrap up you can think of?
Nothing from me. Right. Anything from anybody else? All right. Then we're the next item and last one is executive session, and we've got to move into that now. So forgive me while I read this statement. We're going to move to executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body. I do make such a declaration. The trust will discuss the town-owned parcels for future use as affordable housing to sell with the intention that the funds may be made by such a sale would go to the trust. We will come out of executive session back into open session for the sole purpose of closing the meeting. All right, so that is a motion that I've read to go into executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I roll. Rob Henry.
Rob Henry, aye.
Ed Carr.
Ed Carr, aye.
Tom Mead.
Tom Mead, aye.
Diane Kennedy.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
David Pfeiffer.
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Steve Gomer, aye. Each of you has the code for zooming into the executive session, right?
Right. Yep. Just give me a second to change out.
All right.